Welcome to the week that was, TIOL's weekly news roundup. India is poised on the threshold of major economic policy changes. Today we bring you an insight into the India of tomorrow with news on simplification of direct tax laws, the launching of the Startup Action Plan, and the setting up of the startup ecosystem.
There are also stories on gold, a glimpse into world of inequality, and some bad news for government employees. But first, let's hear about the plan to simplify one of the most complicated legislations in the world.
Complex direct tax laws are set to become simpler and taxpayer-friendly, thereby reducing litigation, improving compliance, and the ease of doing business. In October last year, the government had set up a 10-member committee under the chairmanship of Justice R.V. Ishwar, former judge of the Delhi High Court and former president ITAT, to suggest ways to simplify income tax laws and streamline compliance. The committee has presented its first set of recommendations. Some of the key recommendations are making the process of refunds faster by deferring the contentious provisions relating to ICDS or income computation and disclosure standards. The committee has suggested a higher interest for all delays in refunds and deletion of the clause that allowed the department to delay the refund beyond 6 months. To encourage retail investments in the stock market, it is suggested that stock trading gains of up to Rs 5 lakh must be treated as capital gains and not business income. This will help to remove the confusion in the treatment of such gains. The committee has also recommended TDS rates for individuals to be reduced from 10% to 5%. Dividend income on which dividend distribution tax has been levied should be treated as part of the total income. The committee has also called for raising the threshold limits for deduction of TDS under sections 194C, 194H and 194J. The report suggests exemption of non-residents not having a PAN number from the applicability of TDS at the higher rate on submission of their tax identification number. Eligibility criteria under the presumptive scheme to be doubled to Rs 2 crore to make it easy for small businesses. A similar scheme to levy tax on presumptive basis on estimated income must also be launched for professionals. Even the return form may be amended to provide a column for making disclosures of the assessee's viewpoint on deductions to avoid penalty. Documents for issuance of PAN may be allowed to be self-attested or notarized. Recommendations requiring amendments to the Income Tax Act are expected to be part of Budget 2016, while changes in administrative procedure could be implemented through official notifications issued by the Income Tax Department. The committee's draft report is available in the public domain on our website, taxindiaonline.com. Government employees looking forward to the pay commission increments may be disappointed.
A black hole of a resource crunch may force the Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley, to defer the implementation of the 7th Pay Panel recommendations. The government has appointed an empowered committee of secretaries to work out ways to stagger the implementation of the Pay Commission award through more than one financial year, instead of paying the bill up front. The committee is considering the option of allowing central government employees the rise in pay for all scales but deferring the increase in allowances. Budget estimates for 2015 have pegged the central government salary bill at around Rs 60,000 crore, while the allowances are pegged at nearly Rs 85,000 crore. Such a deferral would allow the Finance Minister to keep within the budget, close to the targeted 3.5 to 3.9% of the gross domestic product. Otherwise, expenses would be impossible to sustain simply on the back of the estimated growth in tax revenue, of which only about 50% has been achieved in the first 8 months of this financial year. The announcement of such a deferral is expected to be a part of Jaitley's budget speech on February 29. After Make in India and ease of doing business, the government brings in the Startups Action Plan.
The Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, launched the much-hyped startup movement this week as he unveiled an action plan to promote easier financing and benefits for startup ventures, making for entrepreneurship, innovation, and employment opportunities in a friendlier regulatory regime. The government has earmarked a corpus fund of Rs 10,000 crore that will support startups and tax incentives. The Startup India mission will provide technology business incubators and research parks, for which the Human Resources Development Ministry and the Department of Science and Technology have agreed to come together to set up 75 startup support hubs at the National Institutes of Technology and other key organizations. A university study course on entrepreneurship is also expected. Here are some of the key takeaways of the Startup Action Package. Startups are exempted from payment of income tax for the first 3 years. Patent registration fees will be reduced by 80%. A new scheme will also provide IPR protection to startups. Newly formed startups will not be subjected to any government inspection for 3 years in respect of labor, environment law, compliance post the self-certification. There is an easier exit clause in the event of business failure. However, there are some grey areas too. Tax benefits to startups will be linked to the innovation quotient. How will innovation be assessed? How will startups be classified? Other concerns relate to arresting the exodus of startups from India to international shores. While the issue of convertible notes needs to be addressed, clarity is also necessary on mergers and acquisitions relating to the taxation of funds in escrow accounts. The Narayan Murthi panel suggests changes in norms to support startups.
Right in the footsteps of the Startup Action Plan comes the report of 21-member Narayan Murthi panel suggesting a relaxed tax structure and revamp of norms governing venture capital and private equity funds in India. The committee set up to advise SEBI on the development of alternative investment and startup ecosystem has recommended tweaking of safe harbor norms, relaxation of withholding tax obligations, enabling onshore fund management in India, and reforming of the alternative regulatory regime. In fact, the report projects a reformed alternative investment fund segment to be capable of attracting investment flows from domestic and foreign investors of up to 2% of India's gross domestic product, which would be critical for the government's startup policy to succeed. The report suggests that currently large capital pools from pension, insurance and DFI's banks and charitable institutions constitute only 10% of the total private equity and venture capital invested in India annually, which must be used to develop the AIF industry. Some of the recommendations made by the committee include treatment of investment gains of AIFs as deemed capital gains, while losses incurred by AIFs should be available for set-off to their investors. The committee pitched for the introduction of the securities transaction tax for private equity and venture capital investments and income besides the elimination of any withholding tax.
Visa norms between India and China may soon be eased.
India and China are set to come closer with the liberalization of visa norms and by overhauling the Security Cooperation Agreement between the two countries. The scope of 2005 Memorandum of Understanding for Exchange of Security-related Information between India and China is being widened to include contemporary global threats like the Islamic State and combat terrorism by sharing experiences and information on terror groups and their linkages. While India has offered the facility of electronic tourist visa on arrival, China wants restrictions to be lifted for conference and research visas as well. China too is working on easing visa restrictions for Indians. There are no boundaries to imagination with new taxes being imposed internationally.
Yes, sugar consumption and obesity are now officially connected. To tackle the growing problem of obesity, Britain will probably become the first government to impose a 20% sugar tax on sweet drinks and foods sold in its National Health Service cafes by 2020. This sugar tax, intended to dissuade people from sugar consumption, is expected to generate about £40 million annually, which shall be used to improve the health of the 1.3 million workers at the NHS. The tax shall be gradually enforced on a rolling basis when food catering and hospital shop contracts come up for renewal over the next 3 to 5 years. The sugar tax would also be linked to UK's upcoming National Childhood Obesity Strategy. Just 1% of the world population controls more wealth than the rest of the planet.
Oxfam has released some disturbing news about the unequal distribution of wealth. This international anti-poverty organization has declared in its report that today only 62 people, including the 9 women, have the same wealth as 3.5 billion people at the bottom of the global wealth pyramid, as compared with 388 individuals just 5 years earlier. These figures indicate that inequality is growing fast and poses a threat to economic expansion and social cohesion, as marked by the increasing strife and tension in the Middle East, Europe, and US. The gap between the rich and poor is widest in the United States, followed by the UK, France, and India. The report also states that tax havens have helped the super rich to hide away $7.6 trillion. Oxfam has urged politicians, the most powerful, who are meeting at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland, to agree to a global approach to end the practice of offshore accounts. India is the home of wealth inequality.
Speaking of wealth inequality, while India has the 4th largest population of millionaires in the Asia-Pacific region, it is also among the countries with the lowest per capita income. According to the Asia-Pacific 2016 Wealth Report by New World Wealth, at the end of 2015, India was among the top 5 countries with 236,000 high net worth individuals, following Japan, China, and Australia. Singapore was ranked 5th after India. India's total individual wealth stood at more than $400 billion, while China topped the list with private wealth of more than $17,000 billion. However, in absolute contrast, on per capita basis, India was placed among the bottom 3 countries with an average wealth of $3,500 per person. Australia topped the ranking with a per capita wealth at more than $200,000. Pakistan's per capita income was the lowest at $1,600. As they say, the world is rich, only the distribution is skewed. Withdrawals from the national pension system may soon be exempted from tax.
To boost savings, Budget 2016 is expected to exempt tax on all withdrawals from the national pension system. This was a recommendation made to the Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley, by the Sector Regulator Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority at the meeting of the Financial Stability and Development Council. Such tax exemption shall bring the national pension system at par with the tax treatment of the PPF and the Employees Provident Fund. Currently, the national pension system has nearly 95 lakh subscribers and assets under management of more than rupees 1 lakh crore. The 7th Pay Commission had also made a similar pitch to exempt withdrawals under NPS from tax to bring it on par with other pension schemes.
On this note, we conclude this episode of The Week That Was. Thank you for watching.
You may write in to us at editor@tiol.in. We wish you a wonderful weekend ahead.